week I'm sharing with you a watercolor study I did of a pear. These little paintings are really helping me work on my observational skills, and then there's all the technical skills you need for watercolor. So I thought I'd share with you some of the problems I came up with and how I addressed them. Here's my setup for this particular painting. I've got my ceramic plate here and I've got my paints lined up on it. I've got my sketch. There's some clear water up here. I've got 2 jars of that. I have the top to another Meeden palette, and I use this all the time for extra mixing and extra. Now, I've got 3 different brushes here, and they are my silver black velvets. I've got a 10, an 8, and a 6. And I've got the colors pretty much picked out for this particular painting. I have azo green, sap green, nickel quinacridone gold, cerulean blue, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, Van Dyke brown, dioxazine purple. I'm starting off with a clear wash of water over the whole pear. And you'll notice that I've got a couple little dabs there of liquid mask, and that's because there is direct light coming from the right-hand side, and I just want to make sure I can capture some of that light. Now I'm dropping in the azo green, and that's very warm green, and I want to cover most of the pear. If you look at the photo up in the left-hand corner, you're going to see that the light is coming from the right-hand side and it's casting a shadow. But if you look off to the left, there is a window. Now, it was snowing that day, so there is some indirect light falling on the pear. It's very diffused, it's very light. So what I'm going to be doing is, after I get the green laid down here on the pear, I'm going to put a little bit of cerulean blue in there. Right now, I'm just very gently laying in the rest of the green, and I'm going to use a damp brush just to blend it in. As long as the paper stays wet or damp, and you can tell by the top of the pear, see that sheen up there in the lights? As long as it stays damp, I can blend using a damp brush. And you'll see me doing this over and over again. I'll drop in a little bit of color, and then gently I'll move the paint around, blending and softening the edges. This prevents harsh lines, it prevents hard edges, but the paper has to be wet. I keep the brush damp to soften the blue as much as possible because the light on this side of the pear is much softer. It's much more diffused than the light on the right-hand side. So I just keep gently moving the paint about. The goal for this color is to be as understated as possible. It's not the primary focus of the painting itself. It's secondary to the light that's coming in from the right. So I want it to be, like I said, as understated and soft as possible. The next color I'm going to be adding is burnt sienna. Now you can see from the photograph that it kind of runs down the middle of the pear, and that's because we've got the 2 light sources on either side, more or less, that keep them much lighter and more in the green spectrum. So what I'm going to be doing is I'll very, very lightly dampen the whole pear again. Now I'm placing the color where I need it to go, making adjustments as I go, very lightly moving it about. As you're painting, you're constantly making decisions just about how strong the color is that you want or the placement of the watercolor. And because you have that time constraint with the dampness of the paper, it's just a constant back and forth. As an example here, you can see I dropped in a more concentrated color, more paint here. And then once I had the paint there, I made the adjustments. I used my damp brush. I moved the paint about a little bit. It was too stark where it was. I wanted the edges softer, so I just very gently manipulated the paint and made the softer edges. Now I'm starting to define more of the pear. I'm going to be adding a mixture of sap green and azo green, and I'm adding a little bit of color now to the pear, more of the true color of the pear itself. And that blue you're seeing on the stem is actually highlight, and I'll go in a little bit and I'll darken it up with some Van Dyke brown and define the stem. The paper itself is actually still damp, which is allowing me to actually be able to blend softly. So I'm moving about, I'm adding color here and there. You'll notice now that the paper is pretty much dry, and you can see how more intense the color is on a dry paper. The way I deal with this is that I have more water in my brush, and this is how I manipulate the paint and move it about. I use a rotating movement to move the paint out. The amount of water that's in the brush depends on how light I want the paint to be. And the trick here is just to not end up with a lot of hard edges, but it can be done. It just depends on how much water and keeping it in a small area. I really try to stay within a defined area when I'm working like this. Just keep your brush full of clean water and just keep rotating and moving your brush about. These little studies are really important to me. I use extra pieces of paper that I save, and I generally focus on just like one object at a time. Like in this case, I'm focusing on a pear. I just want to study the form, the colors. The studies help me with the technical side of watercolor, which, can be a little tricky at times. I paint in a representational style. I'm not a photorealist, never have been, but these little studies really help me with the style of painting that I work in. It's the same process over and over and over again. I'm going to be adding some water, and then on top of that, I'll add the paint and then I'll blend it in. So you're building up layers of transparent paint. Now I'm adding in nickel quinacridone gold. I can never say that word. And once I get the color exactly where I want it, then I'm going to go back in with my damp brush and I'm going to start moving the paint out and blend it very gently. So this is where you want the brush to be damp. So use a paper towel or something and make sure you remove most of the water out of the brush. You want a little water in there. You want it to be damp, not soaking wet. So now I'm going to add another glaze of blue, which is going to darken the color on this side. Then I'm going to go in and I'm going to add detail to the left-hand side. So once I add the detail and I have darkened the blue, I'm going to make adjustments in the middle. I'm going to darken up the burnt sienna, and then I'm going to go to the right and add details there also. At this point of the painting, I'm doing what I call a scumbling effect. What I'm doing is I'm laying down little dots of watercolor, and I feel like this adds a little texture, especially to the bottom of the pear. I left at the top of the pear with just washes only, but at the bottom I did this scumbling. And then once you've got down the colors that you want and where you want them, let it slightly dry. And when it's almost dry, take a dry brush and gently move around the paint itself. You're going to move it around. It kind of blends the colors together, but you're going to get kind of a pattern to it. If you really examine the skin of a pear, it's not one flat, glossy color. There's all kinds of textures all over it. And I love using this effect, especially on organic shapes. In the end, I added a few blemishes to the pear because pears have blemishes on them. And then I added the shadow. I added some Prussian blue, deoxazine purple, and I just feathered it in slightly. If you enjoy content like this and like tutorials on watercolor, I have more tutorials and I will link them up above. Please consider subscribing, and thank you for watching so much, and I will see you in the next video.